Season 1 of The Fairer Sense is sponsored by FreshBooks, the cloud accounting software for small business owners and freelancers who are out there crushing it every day. Stay tuned for more info on how you can get a free trial. Thanks, FreshBooks. I'm Kara.
I'm Tanja.
And this is The Fairer Sense.
Rad women
and real money stories
instead of the same old financial bullshit. On this episode, why women don't feel welcome in money conversations. Hey, Kara.
Hey, Tanja.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I'm in the closet. I'm super jazzed to be here.
You don't mean that metaphorically, do you?
No, though, honestly, fun fact about me, my family definitely thought I was gay for the first 20 years of my life.
We definitely have to get into that another time. But tell me more about this closet that you're actually in non-metaphorical terms.
I am sitting on the floor of my bedroom closet, and it is great. I actually feel very tucked away. I feel like I'm in the womb almost. I feel protected and nice, and I am so excited to be here to be recording.
I love that you're feeling like you're in this physically safe space, this womb-like place, because what a good metaphor for this podcast. Trying to create a safe space for women to talk about challenging money conversations and all the stuff we feel like that's out there that people aren't discussing.
I'm so excited to get the ball rolling on this and to be doing this because we've talked about this for a long time and the time is now. Carpe diem. We're really excited to be doing this to create more space in the personal finance world and in money conversations in general for women, and to have conversations that speak to problems that women face, that speak to issues women are concerned about. And we don't want more of the same old BS. We don't.
So I think that is totally the mission of this podcast of let's have those hard conversations. Let's be honest with each other. Let's get into the root causes of things, including, frankly, some of the stuff that we as women do that holds us back. That's not just about the patriarchy, or it's not just about systemic sexism, but is really some of the stuff we got to own ourselves. And it's only if we talk about it that we can actually make it better.
Absolutely. Some of the hard conversations we want to have are conversations with ourselves and looking in the mirror. And we're not going to shy away from that conversation any more than we're going to shy away from the why are there so many white dudes making podcasts conversation. And we both are financial bloggers and are deeply immersed in the personal finance world, but you don't need to be one to care about this stuff. This affects everyone's life. This is for women. This is for people who care about women. This is for people who are interested in money. This is for people who feel like they can't get into the world of money because they're not hearing their stories or they're not seeing themselves represented. And this is for everyone who wants a bigger, more inclusive platform.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about who we are, because I'm sure that you guys listening are curious. Let's talk about it. So Kara, tell us about you.
I'm Kara Perez. I am the founder of Bravely, which is a financial literacy company for women. You can find us at www.bravelygo.co. And we do financial literacy events for women that center on different money topics, everything from how to raise capital for your startup to paying taxes as a freelancer.
Awesome. I love that you're doing that. And I love that people in Austin get to come see you in person sometimes, and folks everywhere else can experience you virtually. It's so cool.
And why don't you tell me a little bit about you?
I'm Tanja, and I was until recently known on the financial internet as Ms. ONL, which stands for Our Next Life, the early retirement blog that I write. And it's been very much about the journey that my husband and I have been on to retire early, which we are doing in just a few weeks. But we've been able to share the news with everybody now. And so it's publicly known. We don't have to use the pseudonyms anymore. But the blog has really grown into so much more than just our journey. It's really about a lot of the different questions that we should all be asking ourselves, both financial and emotional, about identity and about what does security look like without a job? Where do we derive self-worth if we aren't necessarily contributing to society through some of those traditionally constructed means, and what do we want life to look like? I mean, ultimately, that's something that's really interesting to me, is just thinking about the bigger life questions through the lens of money.
What I'm always interested in is how people kind of have their financial awakening, if they ever do. And I think so much of that comes from your background. I know that I started blogging under a completely different blog title when I was paying off my student loan debt, and I was feeling really panicked about money, and very much so feeling like money was not for me. And some of that comes from how I was raised and childhood lessons, and some of that came from just being hella broke at 26 and having a ton of debt and not knowing how to get myself out of this hole that I felt like I was in. And so I'm super curious about everyone else's money story and everyone else's money background.
And Kara, can you tell folks like how much debt you paid off, how quickly, on what income? Because you are seriously my hero forever for what you accomplished.
Yes, hashtag humble brag. I paid off a little over $25,000 in 3.5 years, but the final $18K in 10 months, while never making more than $32,000.
Like, I'm sorry, you get to humble brag about that for your whole life. I think that is so freaking amazing. And how many jobs were you working to make that happen? That was crazy too.
That was crazy. I look back at that. I worked 5 jobs, 7 days a week for those 10 months. And I honestly look back at it and can't believe I did that. I'm just like, what? That's bonkers.
There are moments in my early retirement journey that feel a little bit like that. Like, we saved how much in what time? But yeah, no, like I think that's so incredible. And the fact that you did that with a below average income is so astonishing to me, because there had to be so much stuff in there for you too, about not just like the actual dollars, but like you were working so hard and not earning a ton, and probably seeing people around you like working much, much less and earning more. And so just like finding the mental strength to keep going on that and to, really keep your focus on your goal, I just think is really incredible.
That's a really good point of it's so much of our relationship to money is not actually about money. It's about things like how much mental fortitude we have, or how much physical ability we have to earn money, or how the world sees us and how the world treats us as money havers and money makers. There's really actually just a small percentage of our relationship to money that is in our control. And I think that is something that needs to be talked about way more.
Oh, totally. And I think a lot about this idea of what our money identity is, or how people see us in regard to the money that we have or that they think we have. I get these emails from folks going like, wow, you're such a money pro and you've done all this stuff right. And like, I don't see myself as a money pro. I was in your shoes in my mid-20s having a ton of debt, and mine was like stupid crap that I charged on my credit cards. And I bought a car brand new with 100% financing. Now, granted, it was like a little Honda Civic, so nothing crazy extravagant, but still, like, I didn't need a brand new car. It didn't even occur to me to buy a used car though. And things like that, where like I had student loans even though I had a full ride scholarship to college, because I needed to like buy some clothes. So I have made plenty of bad money decisions. And I think of money identity as being, obviously, like, if you're someone who is born wealthy, it's one thing. But for most of us, it's such a point in time thing. Any of us could be bad with money, amazing with money, or anywhere in between, just depending on where we are in our journey. And I think that journey is the part that's so much richer than just going like, oh, that person's great with money and you are bad with money. Kara, you're a business owner.
Tanja, you're a business owner.
Woo, go us.
And though we are badass business owners who are out here making hilarious podcasts and super engrossing blogs, parts of the job are not as glamorous.
Like creating invoices, tracking payments, or making sure that people actually pay us for our hard work.
Fortunately, FreshBooks makes all of that stuff easy.
FreshBooks is the cloud accounting software that's changing the world for freelancers, small business owners, and everyone in the gig economy, giving us more time to focus on what we really care about.
Like crushing the patriarchy.
I've spent a 15-year career as a W-2 employee and have never actually had to do my own accounting or send an invoice to get paid. It's intimidating, but FreshBooks makes it completely unscary.
I am both happy and ashamed to say that for over a year, I mixed and matched services to do my accounting, and it took so much time. FreshBooks is literally giving me back my time.
FreshBooks is offering a 30-day unrestricted free trial to the Fairer Sense listeners.
To claim it, just go to freshbooks.com/TFC and enter the Fairer Sense in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
let's get into some of what we really want to talk about in this podcast, which is really actually not hearing our voices, although you'll hear plenty from us over the course of our episodes, but hearing from other women, other perspectives.
I think the question that we're trying to answer today is, why don't women feel welcome in money conversations?
So this is obviously something you and I have really strong feelings about, but this show isn't about us. This is all about hearing from lots of different perspectives.
And that's something that you'll hear throughout the entire season. We are super witty and amazing.
Of course.
And I want to share so much with you, dear listeners, but we think it's super important, and we've made it a pillar of this podcast to bring in different voices with a lot of different perspectives.
We have all heard plenty of money advice from older white men, and that's cool. That stuff's really important, but that's the foundation. We can definitely build on that, and that's what we want to do. To kick off this first episode of The Fairer Sense, we asked this central question about feeling welcome in money conversations to some of our favorite women money bloggers. And these are women who write about money all the time, who are money pros, but who, even despite that, still feel baggage about money or feel weirdness about talking about money, or just some of the baggage that goes along with that. So first up, let's listen to a conversation that I had with Erin Lowry, the author of Broke Millennial, and Liz, better known to many of you as Mrs. Frugalwoods, who writes the Frugalwoods blog and whose book Meet the Frugalwoods comes out in March 2018.
I guess I feel women don't always feel welcome in money conversations because a lot of the time our issues get overlooked or seen as less than or not necessarily important to talk about. And that could be something as universal as the need for maternity leave, as basic as healthcare, issues like the wage gap, or it can even just be the areas in which we are interested in working and whether or not we're suited to be in those positions. So the idea that a woman couldn't code as well as a man, I've joked with friends before, I'm like, why can't we sit at a computer and drink Red Bull as well as other people? I don't understand how that is an actual answer. But if a man does something that a woman is just expected to do, if a man watches his children, well, good for him. But if a woman doesn't watch her children, we get condemned for it. So I think it's really about the equality of those issues as well.
So I think that women often don't feel welcome in money conversations because they're shut out by jargon. There's a great deal of mystery that shrouds finance, and I think that companies and firms go to great lengths to make not only women but all people feel as though they cannot possibly comprehend the nuance of financial management, when in reality, a lot of it is pretty straightforward. And so finding a way to...
And I really want to jump in on this point because I think a lot of what makes women feel unwelcome in money conversations also is meant to intimidate men. So it's not like the whole system is conspiring against us. A lot of investment advisors purposely use opaque terms so that it will intimidate people. Men and women alike will all throw up our hands and go, oh my gosh, this is so above my pay grade. I guess I need you to do this for me and let me pay you the big bucks to do it. That's what they want to happen. They want us to have to pay them and to have to go through them. They want to be the gatekeepers.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. But I think the difference, and Erin speaks to this a little bit, is that women who have historically been kind of blocked from money by not being allowed into the workplace at all, and then not allowed into certain workplaces, not allowed into certain colleges, not been the breadwinners, we get shrunk down to being thought of as the decision makers on a micro level, but not on big picture questions. So it becomes like, well, women can obviously handle the household spending, but they can't handle investing. And I think, again, just Erin's point on this perception of women is so huge. It's such a huge part of it. The fact that we are still having conversations around, well, are women even funny? Well, can women even like sports?
Yeah.
It trickles into other things like our money. Well, are women even good at math? Can you even do this? Of course I can. Of course I can. I just need the opportunity.
It's funny that you say that because we get into that in the next bit. Let's hear more from Liz and Erin.
Speaking in the context of heterosexual relationships here, is that when you go into a conversation about finances, you are often speaking to a man, and even when you're not, they speak to the man more than they speak to the woman. Even if the man makes less than the woman, even if it's on paper, the man makes less than the woman clearly is the one in charge. He's the one getting the eye contact. He's the one that gets the emails. And so it's even just tiny, I mean, those aren't that subliminal of messages, but it's that kind of basic messaging that's getting sent to women that you aren't as important, you don't have the same type of seat at the table. And that's also what we need to get over. And it's not just men financial advisors who do it, but women financial advisors have been known to do it as well.
And I think this starts at a very early age because we don't encourage our daughters to pursue STEM fields. So science, technology, engineering, and math are seen and are marketed as traditionally male. And so we inhibit our daughters from a very early age and say, well, you're good at language, you're good at arts. And this was certainly my experience. I was very poor at math, and everyone said, oh, that's fine, you're an excellent reader, you're an excellent writer. And I never want to cripple my own daughters in that way. I want them to feel that they can pursue these fields if they have an aptitude for it, and certainly that they can understand it. And when we sort of let our daughters off the hook, I think we do them a great disservice. And on the flip side, when we tell our sons, well, you don't need to be verbal, you don't need to write, we're doing them a disservice as well. You need to be a well-rounded person in order to function in the
There's
world.
so much in there that we could discuss. I'm especially struck by Erin's point that the default for financial pros is to start with a male perspective and think of that as the default and act like any questions we as women might have are the niche questions or the frivolous ones. I don't know if they've looked at a demographic chart recently, but we women are more than half the population. Our questions are, by definition, not niche. Also, her point about people talking to the man by default in a relationship if you go in as a couple. This happens with me and Mark all the time. I could tell you so many stories, but I won't even go there today.
I love Erin in so many ways, but I love her point here too as well, because in my relationship, I'm the bigger personality. I'm the one who's way more invested in finances. I'm an extrovert and my boyfriend is an introvert and he's shy and quiet and feels very insecure about money. Whereas I'm like, well, let me tell you how much I made and let's talk about your investment portfolio. And it's so silly to me that people fall into these gender roles of, well, the man is obviously the one in charge or the head of the household or something, when that is not the case. That's not the case in my relationship, and that's not the blanket case for anyone else's. I also love Liz's point of how we do ourselves, our children, and both girls and boys a disservice when we assume, well, you're a girl, you like pink and you're bad at math. You're a boy, you like blue and you're good at science. I think about this all the time when I'm speaking to kids. I try really, really hard to not tell little girls they're pretty. And it's not because little girls aren't pretty. It's because the messaging that little girls get is that we should value their looks instead of their abilities. So you might say to a little boy, it's so cool that you built that Lego house. And to a little girl, you look really nice today. And what does that tell them? That tells the girl, like, hey, spend more time on your looks. And that tells the boy, like, your abilities to do things are going to get you places in life. And again, we internalize these messages and they come out in so many other ways in life, including in our money.
Absolutely. So much in there. Like, a lot of this stuff really is, as you said, stuff that we internalize. And it's interesting because I think one area where women are starting to externalize some of this thinking is the wage gap conversation. It's pretty impossible these days to talk with people who think about money, especially women, and to ask them questions without the wage gap coming up. And not just that the wage gap exists, hashtag not fake news, but what we as women might be doing to perpetuate it. Here is some more from Erin.
I wish other women shared their salaries with their peers, and not just their fellow women, but also men. I think it's important for men to see when and if a woman is getting underpaid, particularly if she either outranks him or is doing the same job. I think that we as women need to unite a little bit in having more transparency around what we're earning across fields. You know, you can't, it's apples and oranges a lot of the time. If you're a professional writer and your friend's a lawyer, you're not going to probably be making the same amount of money, but it's still just healthy to be having these conversations in general as well.
I think this point about transparency around wages is so helpful. I was at an event just the other day where I asked women what they made and everyone got so uncomfortable. And this was just a group of women who had come to talk about money and you could see the discomfort. But I told them, just like I'm telling you now, dear listeners, that you're only doing yourself a disservice when we keep things like this shrouded in mystery.
Totally. And I really love Erin's point about uniting together as women. I think there's something to that. And I know certainly we have to look out for ourselves and our families and all the folks who might rely on our income. But like, if we aren't trying to help boost up other women, none of that's going to change. I know when I was on my way out of my career, I did everything I could to really try to empower junior women coming up behind me and to try to push for pay parity and transparency to the extent possible. So I think that's something we've all really got to focus on. I'd love to play another clip. Kristen Wong, author of the book Get Money, that will be out in March 2018, talked about some pretty similar stuff. And again, like, I didn't ask her about the wage gap. I just asked her about women in money conversations. And here's what she said.
I think when we ask for more or talk about money, it's thought of as like greedy and unlikable, you know, whereas men, it's like represents power more. So I think, yeah, when women talk about money, or mostly when we negotiate and ask for more money, it's perceived as like we are, But I guess it's just because we've spent so long like in the background role that when we come forward, it's kind of like we're trying to take over or something. And it's just the traits that women like are stereotypically, we're supposed to be demure, we're supposed to take up a small amount of space, we're not supposed to be loud, we're not supposed to ask for things for ourselves, whereas, you know, men are expected to do those things. Like, you're supposed to be resourceful, you're supposed to get out there and get it for yourself, and we are supposed to depend on somebody else to do that. So when we actually have to go and advocate for ourselves, it seems like, well, that's not the role that you're supposed to have, and I don't think anybody actively realizes or thinks that they're doing that, but you know, statistically, studies show that people do.
I feel weird saying that I love Kristen's point, because I think it's a point that is really frustrating, but I love the way she said it, that we get judged differently for doing exactly the same things that men do every day. I travel a ton for work still while I'm still working, and it's so frustrating, but kind of funny too. There have been so many times where I've been standing in the group one line because I fly a ton. I get to board in one of the early groups, and someone will come and cut in front of me. And I'm not joking. I'll say, "Oh, excuse me, like, I'm standing here. You don't need to cut in front of me." And they'll go like, "Oh, well, I assumed you just like were in the wrong line." Like, why would you assume that? I'm standing here ready to board. I have like very contained luggage. I clearly look like I've done this before, but that's something that I think is, women aren't supposed to be frequent travelers. Frequent travelers are supposed to be men wearing suits, carrying a briefcase and a rolly bag, not like a woman in jeans with a backpack. That's one case. I think there are plenty more that happen around money that we've all experienced.
Oh my God, that is wild that people do that to you. I don't even know how to process that. That's so rude. That's so unbelievably rude.
Thankfully, it's not a frequent thing, but it has definitely happened more than once.
That is crazy to me.
Or like, I think about stuff that seems a little bit more harmless, but, you know, has an impact and makes a difference in the perceived roles idea. Like, I see a lot of bloggers, always male, write something to the effect of like, "It's so awesome. We live on my income and my wife's income. We just invest." And I think what they're trying to say is something great, which is like, we're living below our means. We're being focused on investing. And so we just don't even see this one paycheck. It just goes straight into investment. So it's really saying live below your means and do automated investing, which are great ideas. But the way of phrasing it that way, of living on the man's income, and her income just gets invested, it sort of cheapens her income, right? It's like the man's income is what is providing for us to live this life that we're living. And just that little way of speaking about it differently, like, I really do think it places different value on the different partners' role in providing for the relationship.
You know, I've never really thought of that, but I think that's a really good point. And I also think it speaks to the fact, like, well, why are you living on the man's income? Probably because he's making more than the woman. And so
there's that.
You can use that to pay. So like, that's what I often think of, because I often hear women say, well, I stay home because I wanted to, and also I made less. So it made more sense for me to give up my salary than for my husband. And I'm like, listen, your life, your choice. You can absolutely stay home with your kids if you want to, but just know that if we didn't have the fucking wage gap, you would make more money. You know?
And then maybe he could stay home.
You know, and these things are not isolated choices. We are all working within the paradigm of the world that we live in, and that paradigm dictates certain things. And I really feel strongly that we just have to think critically about not just our choices and how we operate in the world, but how much of our choice is our choice and how much of that is prescriptive societal training.
Yeah, like the whole idea of having kids and what that does monetarily is super interesting. And obviously women bear so much more of the brunt of that. And full disclosure, neither you nor I have kids. So we are saying this as non-parents, but as champions of women and as folks who follow the data, like I can't tell you how many times I've seen people say on Twitter, and Kara and I are both kind of into Twitter, so forgive us for that. But hear somebody say or see somebody say something along the lines of like, well, you know, there's really no wage gap once you correct for education and pregnancy and maternity leave. Like, wait a minute. Like, that's not something that we should be correcting for. Like, you should not pay a penalty in your career or in your earnings because you have a child, which, oh yeah, you didn't create by yourself. That's something that is just insane to me. And all the different ways that we justify the wage gap is like, oh, well, it's explained totally by pregnancy and the time off you take. And so like, if you didn't have that gap in your resume, you would be earning the same. On top of the fact that we also don't have paid maternity leave as national law, like kind of crazy.
It all compounds on itself, right? Like one roadblock leads to another roadblock leads to another roadblock. And yeah, the fucking, oh my God. People are like, oh, maternity leave. I'm like, listen, don't use my biology as an excuse to discriminate against me, bro. Like, do better. Because here's the thing, like, tons of other countries are doing better. They're like, we see that women are the ones having babies and they're getting penalized for that. Let's correct for that. Let's not let that happen. And the United States is like, oh my God, this is an unsolvable problem. So really tough. Sorry, ladies.
What can you do?
Oh God.
Which is especially interesting because just from an economic perspective, we actually need babies. Like if we want people to continue to boost productivity, which pushes up stock share prices and funds Social Security and Medicare in the future, we need more children growing up to become productive adults. So it's interesting that we find all these ways to penalize motherhood in ways that I think actually disincentivize a lot of women from having kids. And I know for both of us, it's not an economic decision, but I think that there are lots of women out there who are forced to make the decision on an economic basis. And like, I'm sorry, folks, but that's crazy. That's crazy. Like, even if you don't care about women, like you should care about the economy.
Oh my gosh, it is kind of an economic decision for me as a fairly low income earner for the majority of my adult life. I don't know how I would afford kids. Like a child in my life right now would ruin my life financially. It absolutely would. And that's okay to say. I think that's okay for me to say as like a thing. Because people also get weird when women don't want kids. Like, oh my God, you're so selfish. Or do you even think your life would be complete without them? And I'm like, yes, I feel really good about my life. Thanks. I literally had one of my aunts say that to me. She was like, you don't think you'll ever feel that something's missing? And I was like, this thing that I don't want? No, I'm pretty sure I won't miss it. But also, the financials of it are like, children can be very expensive. And for all the, hand-me-down clothes that I could put my kid in, I have to have real money to get them their vaccines. I have to have real money to take them to the doctor and to put food on the table. And I don't have that money right now.
Yeah, for sure. And that's just reality. And the fact that we don't, as a culture and a society, incentivize parenthood and make it easy for people to do that, like, it just doesn't make sense on the individual level or just on the macroeconomic level.
Wild. It is wild.
It is wild.
So obviously we've unpacked a lot here today, and God knows we could unpack some more. There's a lot that goes into why women don't feel welcome in money conversations, and there's a lot that goes into being a woman and dealing with money.
There's so much that we're going to get into in this season of talking about more on this language stuff, more on emotional labor, more on how we as women function with money and class and status in our relationships and how gender roles play out. There's so much. I think there are at least like 30 seasons of content we've got here to talk about. What do you think?
I mean, I hope to be recording the Fairest Sense on my deathbed, just ranting against the patriarchy on my deathbed.
That's both morbid and super sweet.
That's me. That's actually the title of my autobiography. Morbid and super sweet. The Perez story.
I am totally buying that book. And if you want to put me in the acknowledgements, I'll be so excited.
100%. You're in.
Yes.
hear it from you. So please email us at fairersense@gmail.com. And we are also on the Twitters. As Tanja said, we love the Twitters, which is at fairersense.
And you can see our show notes, learn more about us, and get tons more great info at our website, thefairersense.com. We'd love if you'd subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed this, we'd love a review too. Those go a long way to helping new shows like ours get found. All right. Well, it has been so fun chatting with you for the very first episode of The Fairer Sense, and can't wait to share with folks lots more.
Yes. Get super psyched for another 9 episodes and countless seasons ahead.
Woohoo! The Fairer Sense is produced by me, Tanja Hester, and Miss Rad Human, Kara Perez. Our theme music is by The Insider. Our ad music is by Keith McLeod, with additional music from Breakmaster Cylinder, Spinning Merkaba, and Rope for Free. Photography on our website is by Nick Mendez. And you can always find me at ournextlife.com and Kara over at bravelygo.co.
Until next time.